Hi everyone, Ariel Harrison with KUTV here. The children abused by Ruby Franke are speaking out to me today, pleading with Utah's legislature to reconsider a bill that was killed on Wednesday. I received statements from both Russell Franke and E. Franke. They are siblings, and their statements are about a bill inspired by horrific child abuse cases here in Utah that would allow DCFS and police to get a court-approved investigative warrant when serious evidence-based concerns are raised about a child's safety. It failed again this year after being introduced in a different version last year. Now, the sponsor of this bill has coined it Gavin's bill. Gavin Peterson was a 12-year-old boy from West Haven who died in 2024 after being starved and abused in his home by his own family members. Last year, the bill inspired by his case made little to no traction at the legislature, but this year, it has quietly progressed during the legislative session, passing through the Senate committee, to the full Senate, and then to House committee, but ultimately failing this week in a 30-43 vote on the House floor Wednesday. Now, the senator who sponsored the bill put me in touch with Gavin Peterson, the children's father. He is the ex-husband of convicted child abuser Ruby Franke, who was sentenced to prison for severe abuse of her kids. Now, remember those two kids who were held captive and abused by their mother and Jodi Hildebrandt, Russell and Eve, are pleading now with lawmakers to reconsider Gavin's bill. They say it is the tool DCFS needs to fill a gaping gap in our system when children disappear from communities and society and abusers ignore phone calls and door knocks from the state and authorities to check in on them. Now, Russell is the boy who was seen running from the Jodi Hildebrandt home in southern Utah. He said in a statement to me, quote, "I don't know why this bill didn't get passed. I find it shocking that legislators would find it better for kids in an abusive situation to have to fend for themselves and try to escape. This is exactly what I had to do. I realized that I had to get out of my abusive situation with my mom. I wish I didn't need to put my life on the line in order to accomplish this. It would have saved a lot of physical and mental pain for me and my sister. And sure, this bill wasn't even an idea at the time of this event, but for kids in the future, this bill could save them if it got passed," end quote. Now, his sister was also abused in the Jodi Hildebrandt home. Her statement to me reads, this coming from E. Franke, quote, "As many of you know, my name is Eve. I am doing this again because the people making laws are being stupid again. Kids are dying and being traumatized left and right. Well, I don't see why, and that's the problem. I see no reason with real logic behind it as to why this law shouldn't be passed. I remember that for months, police officers and DCFS knocked on my door, but they were never able to come in. If they had, I would have been saved from starvation, isolation, and just child abuse in general. The only reason I survived at all was because my brother was brave enough to take a risk, but clearly the government doesn't have the bravery of a 12-year-old child. They can't even take a risk to protect people. Think about it. A week from when me and my brother were rescued, we were going to be moved to a farm miles away from any civilization. What do you think will happen if you put two psychopaths and two already abused kids together in an isolated farm? Yeah, I probably would have died, but I was lucky. But not everyone is lucky. So many kids aren't. But with this law, they at least have a chance. Also, again, this was my idea. I actually support this law, and I was not told to say any of this. Please, I cannot handle another case, so pass this law," end quote. Now, the kid's older sister, Sherry, who also called police and DCFS multiple times warning that she felt her siblings were in trouble, said to me in a statement as well, quote, "I am deeply disappointed in my state legislature for failing to recognize the protection this bill could bring to children across Utah. This bill was prepared by members of both parties, and child abuse does not discriminate along party lines. Yet every person that voted against it was Republican, and those who abstained are also Republican. Abstaining is still complicity. I understand Utahns worry about the government overstepping. Some have said there's enough laws already that need to be enforced better. Those laws failed Gavin Peterson. Those laws failed my siblings. I called the police a year before my mother's arrest. I called DCFS. The police did all the right things. DCFS did the right things. But because I had no physical evidence despite knowledge of Jodi and Ruby's personalities and past, my siblings could not be saved before permanent damage had been done. Gavin was failed by the state, by no fault of DCFS. His guardians exploited loopholes that allowed them to dodge authorities. Why must we wait until children die until we call attention to abuse? The majority of other states allow for investigative warrants, and it's time Utah stepped up," end quote. Now, people against this bill argue it is government overreach on parental rights and could lead to unjust removals, among other issues. The Franke family, though, adamantly opposes this, saying it is an inaccurate take on the bill that was written and worked on across party lines because of the Gavin Peterson and Franke cases. They urge Utah lawmakers to reconsider Senate Bill 124 before it is too late, as the legislative session ends Friday night. Now, here is more from my conversation with the children's father, Kevin Franke, about this.
I am very disappointed in our lawmakers uh, that they didn't see and share in the importance of this bill. My kids could have been rescued and saved months before they were in August of 2023, and they could have been spared all of the torture that they suffered at the hands of Ruby and Jodi if this law had existed at that time.
Your case and the Gavin Peterson case are two of the main ones they mention in the presentations as they were presenting this to lawmakers and asking for support. You more or less said this, but to you, this feels like such a failure and such a slap in the face because of what your family has been through.
Yeah, it really does. It feels personal, especially since I know some of those representatives. I know that this was an important issue for them at some point in the past. I know that some of them know my kids, and yet they voted this way. In essence, what this vote felt like to me was they were voting in favor and support of Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt and protecting their privacy and what Jodi and Ruby would call their parental right to abuse their children instead of voting to protect children. That's what this effectively was yesterday. Think of it like this. On one end of the spectrum, we have uh, the laws allow, say, DCFS to make phone calls or to go knock on a door. Sometimes they're often accompanied by police escorts. Okay, the parents have no obligation to answer the phone or answer the door. And if they don't, and if there's zero cooperation, the case is closed. Even if there is child abuse happening, the case is closed because there's no other mechanism to pursue it further. On the other end of the spectrum, we have laws that state, okay, now we have irrefutable evidence, physical hard evidence, pictures, video, eyewitness accounts that child abuse is happening. And now those warrants allow the doors to be busted down and the individuals to be arrested, taken into custody, and then eventually prosecuted for felony child abuse. And hopefully the kids are okay. We have this, we have this. And the gap in between is huge. There's no middle ground here. And this is the problem with the laws in this state. What do we do with those parents that are being unresponsive, uncooperative? If there's a parent who's committing child abuse, what do you think? They're going to just open the door to the police and say, oh, yeah, come right on in. Let's have a conversation. Of course, they're not going to do that. And especially since the legislature last year passed more severe penalties and consequences for things like child torture, now they have more incentive to keep it hidden even more. And so they're going to hide. And this bill would now give a mechanism to authorities to break down that barrier and to get in and see the child, see if the child's actually okay. If the child isn't okay, that triggers this other mechanism that's already existing over here. If the child is fine, then everything is dropped, forgotten, and we go back to normal. The point is that our current system is structured to punish those who have already committed the crime. There is no prevention in our current system. It's all just based off, hey, will you please talk to me and tell me if you're abusing your child? Of course, no one's going to say yes to that.
DCFS in some of the presentations actually testified saying, we support this bill. This is a tool we need.
Mm-hmm.
It was pointed out in the debate yesterday that, hey, look, DCFS, that audit found it's failing to meet its current standards. Why give an agency that's already failing and not meeting its own standards, holding employees to a certain, employees aren't meeting the bar, they're failing. Why give an agency like that more power? What do you think about that argument?
Look, if anybody has reason or a grudge to criticize DCFS, it's me and my family. My children were taken from me, and I had no part in the crimes that and the abuse and torture that my children suffered. And yet I had to work with DCFS over a long period of time and eventually was given custody of my children. So if anybody has a reason to hold a grudge or be mad at them, it's me. And you know what? I don't, because I see that they have a very important mission. What they do is critically important. We can't just say, oh, get rid of DCFS. We don't need them anymore. That would be disastrous. That would be like pouring gasoline on a fire. Here's the problem. Okay. Yeah. DCFS has made a lot of mistakes, or DCFS has stumbled a few times. I can personally attest to that. But it's like the state tied their hands behind their back and then gave them a blunt instrument like a spoon and then asked them, go perform surgery on that person with the spoon and your hands tied behind your back. That's what these caseworkers are dealing with. We need to untie their hands and give them the proper authority under the guidance of the state juvenile courts and give them the proper tools to do what's necessary under and with the cooperation of law enforcement. In doing this, we're going to see fewer mistakes, fewer abuses of power, fewer stumblings than we've seen in the past.
Things that Escamilla and Watkins really argued based off your experience that you shared at the legislature was, hey, there's this, we talked about a gap, you and I. Mr. Franke's experience was, they isolate the child, then they ignore phone calls, they ignore door knocks. It's this evasion that parents know with our current system who are abusing their children, they know they can get away with. What needs to change?
Those parents need to know that they can't hide behind their doors anymore or their unanswered phones. If you're committing child abuse, you need to be afraid and know that you're going to be caught and that your child is going to be rescued and be fine. Right now, we're essentially telling kids, sorry, kids, you're on your own. We can't come and get you unless somehow you escape or you find a way to give physical evidence that you're being abused, and then we can interact or then we can come and save you. But until then, you're on your own. Sorry. And to me, that's unacceptable. That's not Utah. We can do better than that.